Hey everybody, welcome to my booth. I'm Jay, and someone sent me a great question via email that I wanted to talk to briefly. They asked, Jay, have you ever worked with a challenging or difficult client? And if so, how'd you handle it? How did you manage the project? And hopefully at the end of it all, walk away with everybody happy. And I've learned over the course of my career in VoiceOver and in restaurant service a lot of stuff about working with people and how to do it successfully no matter what the turns may take. So I'm going to talk a bit about all the tools, tricks, and sort of thought processes that I have found really helpful in case they're helpful to you, both in just setting up your projects for success and then addressing things should a problem arise. So firstly, as sort of just a foundational understanding that's been helpful for me, is whenever somebody that you're working with or for or providing a service to starts to become difficult or challenging for whatever reason, more often than not, whether they're becoming overly demanding, say asking for more revisions than would be typical or appropriate, or if they're indecisive, they don't really know what they're looking for, and that makes it hard for you to do your job well, or worst case scenario, if they are becoming a little bit upset and things are becoming confrontational and there's tension or friction, no matter what's going on, no matter how we got here, no matter if it's anybody's fault or not, the issue usually comes down to, in my experience, that this person had an expectation, and that expectation just wasn't met at some point. And that's really all it is. And the reason I like framing it that way specifically is it's actionable. I can do something about it. You had an expectation. What was it? And then how can we meet it? And beyond that, it puts me in an empathetic and problem-solving state of mind where, oh, you had something that you were looking for that wasn't met for some reason or another. And again, that doesn't mean that it's anybody's fault, but it puts us both in a problem-solving state of mind rather than going down the road towards frustration or something like that. So understanding that it was just an expectation that wasn't met, then the question becomes, how can I, as the service provider, ensure that expectations are met? And the best way that I've found to making sure that happens is to simply, at the beginning of any project, clarify the expectations. Take the moment to just lay out, even if it's something that you know, this is what I'm thinking for the roadmap. Does that sound okay for you? And what I mean by that is, to use an example, if you're doing an audiobook production, if you're working in particular with someone who's not familiar with the process, this establishing and clarifying of expectations is really valuable, because then you're both setting up an understanding of how the project is going to go. And that's just, I can't understate how valuable that is. This step is less important if you're working with established professionals. For example, if I'm working with a big publishing house, everybody knows how the process is going to go, and I can still clarify things like when I deliver the files, what's the best way to go about that? Things like that can be really valuable as well, just to prevent any slips down the line. But again, it's most valuable with folks who are unfamiliar with the process. So I'll stick with the first-time author scenario in particular because it's easy to wrap our heads around. So if someone comes to you, it's their first book that they've ever published and you're producing the audiobook for it, that's very exciting. But also, I know for myself, I had no idea what an audiobook production process looked like until I was doing it myself. And so by laying this out, I can say, here's the roadmap I propose. Does that sound okay for you? And then they can either greenlight it, sign off, say that's great, and you're off to the races, or if they'd like to make changes, this is a great point where a great stage in the project, rather, where both of you can discuss any potential changes. If, for example, the author says, I'd love to review the audio chapter by chapter. As soon as you record chapter 1, I'd love to listen and provide feedback. And then it kicks back to you. And the important thing here is I, as the service provider, am still in control. I have the green light power in this moment. And I can either say, sure, sounds good to me, let's go for it. I can also say, I'd love to try it that way. That's not a typical production process for audiobooks. So just to prevent us from going, off the rails, I'd like to set up these sort of terms and conditions in order to do this. That's totally within your power as well, if you want to go down that road. You can also simply say, I'm not willing or able to do that. I'm so sorry. And as long as you, when you say no to anything for whatever reason, are able to provide concrete and, reasonable reasons why it's not going to work for you. For example, recording chapter by chapter and waiting for feedback for myself would, as just a hypothetical example, slow down the production process to the point where we just won't have time in my production schedule because I'm booked for the next 3 months. Or it's going to break up the flow of your book far too much in order to make it smooth and cohesive performance. Something like that is totally reasonable, and then the author can either say, all right, I understand, or they can walk away, and that's up to you. Now, in a worst case scenario where things start to go off the rails and maybe become a tad bit confrontational, laying out this roadmap is again valuable because you can call back to it at the end of the process or whenever friction arises. If I've said at the beginning, this is the roadmap I propose, and the author in this case, or whoever your client may be, has signed off on it, if they make changes down the road, you can say, I'd be happy to accommodate that. I'm going to have to ask for an extra fee as this is outside the bounds of our original agreement, something like that. And that's totally reasonable and within your power. And again, you stay in the driver's seat, which is very, very valuable. The last couple things that I'll say is if and when anything goes off the rails, the best method of addressing it is to take a deep breath, take a step back, reevaluate everything, and assume the best intentions. Always approach everything with a smile because, as I said towards the beginning, it's very easy to spiral down the road towards frustration, towards confrontation, especially now in this day and age. And just by affording yourself the little step back, the moment to collect yourself, 9 times out of 10, if I read the email aloud, I'm like, why did I think that this sounded like they were upset with me? It's just a down to business message. There's nothing wrong with it. And it just avoids a lot of potential issues. If you assume the best in people, you approach everything with a smile and with compassion and empathy. It sounds a little bit, out there, but it really, really goes a long way. And it helps people to want to keep coming back and working with you time and time again. Anyway, hope this was helpful for you. If you have any methods that you like to use, I'd love to hear them down below. And if you have any questions about anything or think I could expand further, likewise, let me know. Until the next one, be well, everybody, and I'll see you there. Toodles.